One of the most fascinating things I have observed in 30 years of studying geopolitics is how the side that appears to be losing is very often the side that is winning. And right now, in the most consequential conflict of our generation, everyone is watching the wrong war. I want to show you something that nobody in mainstream media has had the courage or the knowledge to explain clearly. Iran is not losing. Iran is not on the edge of collapse. Iran is not desperate. Iran is executing a strategy, a decades-long, carefully constructed, systematically implemented strategy, and by every serious measure of that strategy, Iran is winning. I am Professor Jiang. I have spent 30 years studying power, military doctrine, economic warfare, and the decisions that determine which nations rise and which nations fall. Today, I want to walk you through exactly what Iran is doing, why it is working, and what comes next. Because if you understand this, you understand the world differently. And understanding the world differently is the only real competitive advantage that exists. Stay with me. Before I go deeper, I have one gift for you. People ask me every day, Professor Jiang, what is real anymore? Because the internet is full of fake success, fake gurus, fake promises. But after 30 years studying money, power, and human behavior, I discovered something dangerous. Most people are not poor because they lack opportunity. They are poor because they are mentally programmed to stay average. That programming controls your decisions, your risks, your income, your entire future. That is exactly why the TPP system was created. Inside, you receive mindset mastery training, advanced wealth strategies, investment fundamentals, a private mastermind community, and a complete success roadmap with instant access to premium video lessons and ebooks. This is not motivation. This is financial re-engineering. And here is why thousands join with confidence. You receive a full 60-day money-back guarantee. Use the system for 2 full months. If your mindset and financial clarity do not transform, you pay absolutely nothing. Zero risk, complete protection. The investment is $5,399, one time. One decision can change your financial trajectory forever. Do not worry. I already placed the link in the description and pinned comment. This is Professor Jiang. Authentic, calculated, guaranteed. Secure your position now. Now let us get back to what matters. Let me start with a fact that most people know, but very few people have properly thought about. In April 2024, Iran fired more than 300 drones and missiles directly at Israel. This is documented. This is confirmed. This happened. And here is what also happened. 99% of those projectiles were intercepted by American naval assets, by Jordanian Air Force, by Saudi radar and interception systems cooperating quietly. The entire Western alliance, plus regional Arab states that publicly claim to oppose Israel, combined their military resources to stop that attack. And the mainstream commentary said Iran failed. Iran's attack was a failure. Iran embarrassed itself. Now I want you to think about that very carefully, because I believe that analysis is completely wrong. And I believe Iran's military planners knew exactly what they were sending, knew the interception rate, and launched that attack anyway. Not because they expected the missiles to land, because they needed the world to see something else entirely. They needed the world to see that Iran, a country under the most severe sanctions regime in modern history, under maximum economic pressure from the most powerful country on earth, under threat of military action from the most advanced military force in the Middle East, could absorb all of that pressure and still launch 331 projectiles simultaneously at its primary adversary. That is not a military demonstration. That is a political demonstration. That is Iran telling every government in the Middle East, every government in the global South, every government that has been watching and calculating, we are not broken. We are still here. We can still act. And that message landed, even if the missiles mostly did not. Now let me give you the strategic context that makes this even more interesting. When Trump withdrew from the JCPOA in 2018, the Iran nuclear deal that the Obama administration had negotiated, his stated goal was maximum pressure. The theory was straightforward and had a certain logic to it. Crush Iran economically, starve the regime of resources, create internal pressure from the Iranian population who blame the government for their economic suffering, force Iran back to the negotiating table in a position of weakness, get a better deal, or watch the regime collapse. That was the theory. Here is what actually happened. Iran's economy contracted sharply. This is documented. Inflation peaked at over 40%. The Iranian rial lost the majority of its value. Ordinary Iranians suffered enormously. And the nuclear program accelerated, not slowed, accelerated. In 2018, when Trump left the deal, Iran was enriching uranium to approximately 3.67%, well below the 90% weapons-grade threshold. By 2023, Iran was enriching to 60%. By 2024, International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors were documenting uranium particles enriched to 84% in Iranian facilities. 84%. Weapons grade is 90%. The distance between 84 and 90 is not a technical distance. It is a political decision and a matter of days. Iran went from 3.67% to 84% while under maximum economic pressure, while being told daily that the sanctions would force it to stop, while watching its currency collapse, while watching its people suffer. And it kept going. What does that tell you? It tells you that maximum pressure produced maximum nuclear progress. It tells you that the theory failed. Not partially failed, completely failed. And yet the policy continues. That is fascinating to me. That is one of the most fascinating strategic miscalculations I have observed in my career. But here is where the analysis gets even deeper. Because Iran did not just accelerate its nuclear program under pressure. Iran built an entirely new strategic architecture while the world was focused on the nuclear issue. Let me explain what I mean. The axis of resistance. You have heard this term. Most people understand it vaguely as Iran and its friends in the region. Hezbollah, Hamas, various militia groups in Iraq and Syria. Most Western analysis treats these as separate organizations that Iran funds and influences. That analysis misses the architecture. What Iran built over 30 years is not a collection of allied militias. What Iran built is a distributed military network specifically designed to survive, absorb, and retaliate against any attack on Iran proper. Think about what that means strategically. If America or Israel attacks Iran directly, Iran does not have to respond from Iranian territory. Iran responds through Hezbollah in Lebanon, which has an estimated 150,000 rockets and missiles pointed at Israel. Iran responds through Houthi forces in Yemen, which have demonstrated the ability to strike targets 1,200 kilometers away. Iran responds through Iraqi militia forces that are within range of American bases in Iraq and Syria. Iran responds through a network that is geographically distributed across 5 countries. You cannot destroy that network with 1 strike or 10 strikes or 50 strikes, because the network is not a central structure. It is a distributed system. Destroy one node, the others continue functioning. This architecture took 30 years to build. 30 years of Iranian investment, Iranian training, Iranian weapons transfers, Iranian strategic patience, and it is now operational. And that means that any military action against Iran comes with a guaranteed, distributed, multi-front response that the attacker cannot prevent or predict precisely. That is not weakness. That is one of the most sophisticated strategic deterrence architectures that exists in any regional conflict in the world today. Now let me bring in Trump, because Trump's return to the White House changes the calculation in ways that are both obvious and non-obvious. The obvious part, Trump believes in maximum pressure. Trump withdrew from JCPOA in his first term. Trump will apply even greater economic pressure in his second term. Trump has surrounded himself with advisors who are hawkish on Iran. The maximum pressure campaign will be more intense than before. This is the obvious part. Everyone is discussing this. The non-obvious part is what Iran has learned from the first Trump administration. Iran watched maximum pressure in 2018 through 2021. Iran observed every component of that strategy. Iran observed what worked against it and what did not work against it. Iran observed the domestic political pressures inside America that constrained how far maximum pressure could actually go. Iran observed the limits, and Iran made adjustments. The adjustments are visible if you know where to look. First, Iran diversified its economic relationships aggressively during this period. China became Iran's primary economic partner. In 2023, Iran signed a 25-year strategic cooperation agreement with China. China was buying Iranian oil at a discount throughout the sanction period, providing Iran with a revenue stream that partially offset American sanctions. The sanctions hurt Iran, but they did not isolate Iran, because China decided that maintaining access to discounted Iranian oil was worth the secondary sanction risk. This is a direct product of the broader US-China strategic competition. America cannot simultaneously pressure both China and Iran at maximum intensity. Pressuring Iran requires Chinese cooperation. Chinese cooperation requires American concessions on other issues. American concessions on other issues conflict with American strategic competition with China. This is not a solvable problem within the current geopolitical structure. It is a genuine strategic bind. Second, Iran accelerated its drone program specifically by studying the performance of its own weapons in real combat conditions. The Shahed drones that Iran supplied to Russia for use in Ukraine, this is documented, this is confirmed. Those drones were performing a dual function. They were helping Russia militarily. They were also providing Iran with real-world data on drone performance, interception rates, electronic warfare countermeasures, and targeting accuracy against defended targets. The drones that Houthi forces used against Red Sea shipping in 2023 and 2024. Drones that disrupted global shipping routes and forced major commercial shipping companies to reroute around Africa were the product of that evolved capability. Iran learned from every engagement. Iran improved from every engagement. Iran entered Trump's second term with better weapons, more experience, and more diverse strategic partners than it had during Trump's first term. Let me talk about Israel. Because Israel is the actor in this conflict that has taken the most direct action, and understanding Israel's strategic position right now is essential. Israel's strategic position in 2025 is genuinely difficult, and I want to be precise about why. After the October 7th Hamas attack in 2023, and after Israel's military response in Gaza, and after the exchange with Hezbollah in Lebanon, Israel finds itself in a position where it has demonstrated enormous military capability, and at the same time faces an adversary, Iran, that has not been deterred by that demonstration. In April 2024, after the 331 projectile attack from Iran, Israel conducted a retaliatory strike, a small, carefully calibrated strike against an Iranian air defense radar installation near Isfahan. The strike was designed to demonstrate that Israel could penetrate Iranian air defenses. That is what it demonstrated. But here is what is interesting about that strike. Israel chose not to escalate. Israel chose to demonstrate capability without choosing to use that capability at full scale. Why? Because the Israeli calculation on a full-scale strike against Iranian nuclear facilities involves costs that are genuinely prohibitive, even for a government as willing to use military force as Netanyahu's. The costs are these. A strike on Fordow Iran's most protected nuclear facility, built deep underground into a mountain, requires a munition that only America possesses in adequate quantity, the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator. Israel does not have this weapon. Israel has requested it. America has not provided it. Without that weapon, a strike on Fordow, the most critical facility, is not militarily achievable with certainty. That single fact shapes the entire Israeli strategic calculus. Israel can strike other Iranian nuclear facilities, but Fordow specifically, the facility that Iran has specifically built to survive military strikes, cannot be reliably destroyed without American participation. And American participation requires an American political decision that no American president has yet been willing to make. This is the central strategic knot that has defined this conflict for years, and it has not been resolved. So where does this leave us? Let me give you the honest assessment. Iran is closer to nuclear capability than at any point in its history. This is documented by the International Atomic Energy Agency. This is acknowledged by American intelligence. This is the assessment of every serious analyst working on this question. The maximum pressure strategy has not stopped this progress. It has coexisted with this progress. Iran's distributed deterrence architecture, its network of proxy forces across 5 countries, is more capable today than it has ever been. The Houthi disruption of Red Sea shipping demonstrated this capability to the entire world in real operational terms. Iran has deepened its relationships with China and Russia in ways that provide economic and diplomatic buffers against Western pressure. And the Strait of Hormuz, 20% of the world's oil, remains under Iranian threat. This is not a future contingency. This is a permanent strategic reality that constrains American and Israeli military options every single day. Against this picture, the Western strategy, maximum pressure, plus threats of military action, plus diplomatic isolation, has produced the result I described. Iran at 60% enrichment, with a breakout timeline measured in weeks. Not years, weeks. Now Trump returns with more maximum pressure. And the question every serious analyst is asking is this. If maximum pressure from 2018 to 2021 produced this outcome, what does more maximum pressure from 2025 produce? I have studied enough history to know that when a strategy consistently produces the opposite of its intended result, the honest question is not how to apply more of the same strategy. The honest question is whether the strategy is fundamentally misconceived. Let me tell you what I think happens next. Not prediction, analysis, based on documented patterns and real strategic constraints. The most likely near-term scenario is this. Trump applies maximum economic pressure on Iran. Iran responds by accelerating its nuclear program toward weapons-grade enrichment, creating a timeline that forces a decision. Israel pushes America for military action before Iran crosses the final threshold. America faces the choice between military action with all the costs I described and accepting a nuclear Iran. This is not a comfortable choice. There is no good option in this choice. Both options have severe costs. Military action risks Hezbollah rocket attacks on Israel, Houthi attacks on Gulf shipping, militia attacks on American forces in Iraq and Syria, Iranian cyber operations against American infrastructure, and Iranian mining or closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Oil prices go to $150 or more per barrel. The global economy enters a severe inflationary shock. Accepting a nuclear Iran changes the entire security architecture of the Middle East permanently. Saudi Arabia has stated it will pursue its own nuclear capability if Iran acquires one. Turkey has made similar statements. The nuclear non-proliferation framework, which has been under strain for years, could collapse. These are the 2 options. And between these 2 terrible options, the current policy of maximum pressure and threats without decisive action is not a third option. It is the absence of a decision. And the absence of a decision is itself a decision. It is a decision to let the situation continue moving in Iran's direction. Which brings me back to where I started. Iran is not losing. Iran is executing a strategy. And the question is not whether Iran is losing. The question is whether America and Israel have a strategy that matches Iran's. And after 30 years of studying this, I am not certain the answer is yes. Now here is why this matters for you directly. Because everything I have described, the nuclear timeline, the proxy network, the Strait of Hormuz, the oil markets, the economic warfare, all of it eventually becomes a number. The number in your gas tank receipt, the number in your grocery store total, the number in your retirement account balance, the number in your business revenue when supply chains tighten and costs rise and consumer confidence falls. Geopolitics is not abstract. Geopolitics is the upstream cause of the economic conditions you live inside every single day. People who understand the upstream, people who can see the cause before they feel the effect, are people who can make decisions proactively rather than reactively. That is financial intelligence. That is the difference between the people who navigated 2008 and came out ahead and the people who lost everything. Not different luck, different understanding. The TPP system is built around exactly this principle. Understanding systems, understanding causes and effects, understanding how power, money, and human behavior interact at a level that most people never reach because they are never taught it. 60 days, full guarantee, zero risk. The link is in the description and pinned comment. Now let me close with this. What Professor Jiang wants you to take from this video is not fear. Fear is the enemy of clear thinking. What I want you to take is clarity. The clarity to see that this conflict is not going to end quickly or cleanly. The clarity to see that Iran has been systematically underestimated for decades and is now in a stronger position than at any point in the Islamic Republic's history. The clarity to see that the decisions made in Washington, Tel Aviv, and Tehran in the coming months will have direct economic consequences for every person on this planet. And the clarity to understand that being informed, being analytically literate, being financially prepared is not a luxury for academics and elites. It is survival intelligence for ordinary people living in an increasingly complicated world. I am Professor Jiang. I am going to keep telling you what I see, not what is comfortable, not what is popular, not what gets the most engagement, what is true, what is documented, what the evidence actually supports, because that is the only thing worth telling you. Subscribe, come back for the next one, because what happens in the next 90 days in this region, I promise you, will be one of the most fascinating things we have watched together. This is Professor Jiang. Authentic, calculated, guaranteed. Stay sharp.